We're here with Bruce Feldman of CBS Sports, and you've had quite the past year of your life. What was it like for you as a reporter to actually become major nationwide news?
Yeah, I mean, it was surreal. That was the only way I could describe it, because it's like you are, the expression, the thought that kept on coming is like, it's like you're looking down at your own funeral. All these people are saying these things about you. You can't respond. You're kind of wondering at the same time you're wondering, where is this headed? And it's like you're in a dream at this point. And, to see the reaction, I was really moved. Like, somebody just came up to me here and said, "Hey, I saw you tweeted about this last week, so I wanted to come and say, and I appreciate you talking about, a little of what happened." And my approach to this has been, I had so much support from people, a lot of people who, either I had once sent an email to or responded to an email or something. And I feel like, part of what we do is we are out there on Twitter. And if you have, however many followers you have, people are supporting you or they're trusting you or whatever. And I think that because of that, if they ask questions, I'm not saying we're entirely public figures, they need to know everything about your life, but something like that, people have come up to me and they've asked, I've been honest about it, because, I've never had anything to hide with what happened. And people have legitimate questions, and I was comfortable with that. And I've had so many people who either were working on like a master's thesis about Twitter and sports, or my case and my situation, and it's just been, I don't want to say it's cathartic. I mean, it was initially to finally be able to say what happened, but now I just think people are trying to be supportive. If people are supportive, I think you have to respect that.
How much of a relief was it after all those months to finally get it off your chest when you
It
finally...
was huge. You know what? It really was. I, think back, it was September 1st. I hadn't been able to say anything publicly for about what amounted to 6 weeks. And part of that was when I was leaving ESPN as well. And when I was flying across the country, and nobody except for like a handful of people knew that I was taking a job. They knew I was leaving. They didn't know I was going to CBS. And I'm on a plane. I just remember I had Wi-Fi to go from LA to New York, and I remember looking at the PR person saying, "Hey, we have you set up to talk to the Wall Street Journal, and then have breakfast with the New York Times, and then Richard Deitch from Sports Illustrated wants to interview you, and Dan Patrick." And I said, okay. And he said, as we're going through it, as it turned out, I did the Wall Street Journal first thing in the morning, then I had the breakfast with the New York Times. By the time I got to Deitch, who was the third call, some of the stuff was coming out. Well, then I get to Dan Patrick, and I had tweeted, CBS wanted me to hold off till 11 a.m. Eastern before I had tweeted, that was my first tweet back, that I was going to CBS, that I had just been hired by CBS. And I go on with Dan Patrick, and you have this guy who obviously had his own really stormy relationship with ESPN, and he understands the place better than probably anybody, because he's at a high level. They had clashed with him, and so to have him really asking the questions and knowing how the place works and knowing how the dynamic can be, that part was really cathartic. And if I ever have anybody say to me, people either I grew up with who are like, "Oh, are you still at ESPN?" or people who are, say, "Well, what exactly happened?" I'll say, just, Google me and Dan Patrick, and you can find out pretty much everything you need to know in 10 minutes.
How frustrating was it to know what was going on with your situation and then see ESPN still promoting someone like Craig James, who has his own ethical concerns and was directly related to your situation?
It was we got a high ceiling in my living room, and literally when this guy Vince Doria, who's on the news side and is pretty high up, he's in his 60s, when he had brought up my credibility issues with the company, and literally I'm thinking, you put Craig James on the air, I literally thought I was going to jump through a skylight. I was so wound up from it, because through all that was going on, this is the part that I just could never grasp, was they're so wound up about me at that point and Mike Leach's book, that instead they never looked at it and said, and never wanted to address, okay, well, there's all these emails and documents and depositions taken under oath that show clearly that Craig James hired a PR firm, the Spaeth PR firm behind the Swiftboat campaign, to smear Mike Leach and to work with ESPN and to work with Texas Tech, and to do this, and they never were addressing that. I mean, Craig James was on their air for a year and a half when people there knew that there was some level of it, and Craig James clearly had probably had told them, you know, it's not true, I didn't hire them. But then when all the information is right in front of them, it was on yahoo.com, it was on si.com, they could have easily looked at the book, in the back of the book, the actual emails were all back there, and they never addressed it. And then he was on ESPN's air till the point he left because he decided he was going to run for office. It is just a mind-boggling situation for a journalism company to get themselves in that situation, I thought. And, you know, they let Craig, you know, let him go down that road. And it's funny because I've watched, you know, some of his political campaign, and I feel like, you know, there's people who ask him, but they really don't push him on some of these issues. And what his you know, reaction to the Leach stuff has been, well, I was just doing what any other parent would do. Well, you know what? I don't know any other, and he keeps talking about Real Street. I don't know any other parent whose reaction would be to hire a PR firm that was behind the Swiftboat campaign to smear somebody. That's a reaction I would never think of, and that's the, you know, and then he denies all this stuff that's been, you know, it's documented. I mean, he was shown these things when he was getting deposed, and so it's just you know, it's mind-boggling that some of these things happen, and people, I think most people, when they know him, know there was a lot of this stuff that just was not being held accountable to the truth, but just to still see that the political side is he's basically, you know, some of this stuff is just still going out there.
Any regrets?
No, I mean, you know, I want to say this. I enjoyed my time with ESPN. I worked with a lot of great people there. You know, I was there for a really long time, and I was proud of the work I did. And, you know, in a way, you know, I'm sorry that everything happened. You know, that you find out certain things. Like there's some people that I have a completely different perspective on because I know what they're capable of when their backs are to the wall, and that's sad when you know that about people. But I'm thankful that CBS, and there were a lot of places that were you know, very supportive and give me a really good opportunity, and I'm pleased by that. It's just, you know, what it did to my family for a long time was really troubling, and it was really tough on, you know, not just me but my wife and my family. I mean, I just remember my sister found out, you know, from the New York Times. Literally, somebody said, "Isn't your brother Bruce Feldman?" My sister said, "Yeah." And his picture's in the paper today, so she buys 3 copies, and that's how she found out. And to go through that, and to basically where you can't really have a conversation with people close to you, unless they're really your family, you know they're not connected to anything, is a tough thing, especially for somebody in the media who's used to talking about things.